Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Rachel and I am knitting. Not right now, but most of the time. And I have been knitting, so I'm going to tell you all about it. Hello, hi, hope you're doing well today. Today for me is Monday, January 20th, so happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day to all of you. I hope that you are safe, happy, well, and enjoying whatever you're making, no matter what day you're watching this. So yeah, hope you're doing well. Hope this video finds you well, which is much more preferred than an email finding you well. Am I right? Okay, so let's get started. Today's video is episode 41 of my weekly podcast series, which is a series where I talk all about what I've been making over the course of the previous week. Usually that's very knitting focused. Sometimes I talk about my spinning. If I ever get back into crochet, I'll talk about that, cross stitch, yada, 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 yada. Basically, I tell you what I've been getting up to, how I feel about it, and what I think about it. So, if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss future episodes where I yap about everything that's on my needles and etc. Okay, so let's get started. Today's episode, episode 41, covers my making progress from January 12th through January 19th. Yesterday. Technically, I've knit a few stitches on this thing on my needles, which I'll tell you about shortly. I knit a few stitches earlier this morning, but we're just going to say this update goes through the end of yesterday. So let's start the podcast with project updates. Here's the thing, folks. I have less and less projects to update you on because I've kind of been in this, I don't know, phase of semi-monogamous knitting, meaning I really have been devoted to one project at a time, which has its benefits. It's very, very, for me right now, it's very nice. It's very calming, very meditative, but also kind of boring if I'm making a podcast about all the things I'm knitting and I only have one thing to show you. So I do have a few things, so more than one, but I just wanted to get that out there. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety about having fewer projects to show you lately, but also at the same time, I'm enjoying being a monogamous-ish knitter. So, you know, we'll see where that takes us. But all this to say, my first project to update you on, which is my biggest undertaking of the last week, is my Felix cardigan. As you can see, it's off the needles. Well, I won't do that yet. I'm going to put it on to show you how it's fitting, and this will help demonstrate what I'm feeling about this project. But before I do that, I just want to tell you a little bit about it. So this is the Felix cardigan. It's a pattern designed by Amy Christoffers, aka Savory Knitting. Obviously it's a cardigan. There's also a pullover version. And this pattern is really, really, I think, just elegant. Simplicity. Where is my brain going? Elegant simplicity. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very, I don't know, I just think it's classic. It's a great statement piece while also being a great wardrobe staple, in my opinion. So basically, the real showstopper of this pattern that makes it more than just a plain stockinette cardigan is that basically the raglan increases incorporate these eyelets. In my last podcast episode, I referred to them as triangles. And let me just tell you, I know these are not triangles. I know they're V's or arrows or whatever. Okay, but when I was talking about them last week, triangle was the word that came to my brain, so that's how I referred to these. But these eyelet, V's, arrows, however you want to refer to them, even if you want to call them triangles, I won't judge you. They make this a really, really just delicate and cute staple piece. I knit mine up in one strand of analog DK. here I have the leftovers of my skein right here. This is Analog Decay from Sam of Clockwork Fiber Co. in the colorway Fairy Thimbles. I'm going to talk about Analog Decay several times throughout the course of this podcast because the project back here, well, it's not a project, it's a swatch really, on my needles is the same base. It's also Analog Decay. This is 100% Shanico wool, which is a blend, or the breed of Shanico sheep is a cross between Merino and Rambouillet. And I just have to say the end result of what these sheep make into yarn, their wool, is the best, most delicious yarn I've ever had on my needles. So I knit this with one strand of that Shanico wool, the Analog Decay, and then I held it with one strand of also Fairy Thimbles on Sam's Chime Surrey base. Now, the Felix Cardigan is knit with quite an open gauge. I used US size 10 needles for this fabric, and despite the fact that it's an open gauge, this is still quite a constructed fabric. It's not like loosey-goosey, and I think that's because this is DK held with lace, so it almost works up as if a worsted, somewhere in between, and then of course that halo from the Surrey kind of fills in the gaps. So the fabric is not just gonna fly away in the wind, despite being knit up on large needles. It just feels amazing. It feels amazing on my body in terms of the weight of the fabric and the density of the fabric. I'm so pleased with it. However, there are some fit issues that are not necessarily the pattern's fault, but there are some things that I'd like to adjust. So let me go ahead and take this opportunity to get out of my sea glass. I'm wearing my sea glass sweater, by the way. This is designed by Wool and Pine Designs. It's a 1x1 colorwork sweater throughout. It's very warm, and it's very cold where I live right now, relative to what the temperatures normally are. We actually have a snow day tomorrow, which is very exciting, but I'm getting way off track. I'm gonna take the sea glass off and then put the Felix on, and then we'll talk about the fit. So let's do the cool thing that Leslie does and snap our way to it. Look, here I am in my Felix. The magic of movie editing just continues to amaze. All right, so maybe you can already tell some of the things that bother me about the fit of this sweater. The first and perhaps most glaring issue, just because of my own personal preferences, is that the neckline is not quite as high or tight as I would prefer. This is not a deal breaker. This is just my personal preference. I don't like my shirts to show outside the bounds of my sweater collar. My preference is that the sweater, whether it's a cardigan or a pullover, covers the collar of the shirt underneath completely. That's just what I like. So this cardigan doesn't do that, even when it's buttoned. To fix that, simple fix, I could do a few different things. I could go in with a crochet hook and I could do single crochets or even slip stitch crochets along the neckline. This will cinch it up and make it tighter and bring it in. Also, I could sew a line of elastic thread either at the base of the collar or the top of the collar, or both. I've done a mix of those on other sweaters. In fact, on my sea glass, you can see I have sewn in a line of elastic on the collar on my sea glass because it had a similar problem. This is common. It happens all the time. It's a quick fix. However, I don't know if I'm going to do that quick fix on the Felix because there are some other issues at work here. But I will say this is the first time that I will have worn the Felix over jeans. So I'm going to kind of see for myself for the first time with you right now about how I like the fit with the Felix. When I tried it on yesterday, I just had like bike shorts on for lounging around the house. This is cute. This is a nice length for over jeans. These are high-waisted jeans, so sometimes I'll wear them with my shirt tucked in. Now, obviously, the shirt is not tucked in, and I think the sweater looks good. It's a nice length. I'll have to look at it in a mirror and you know, fiddle around with it and see what I think. But in the viewfinder, I think it looks okay. Now, in terms of fit, I'm sorry that my head is a little bit cut off, but I don't really think you care. Okay, so in terms of fit, if I'm going to fix the neckline, it means that I can't necessarily do some other fixes that I have on my radar. So as you'll notice, there are 6 buttons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's all well and good. However, I don't like the distance betwixt them. If you'll notice, the first 5 buttons are equidistant from each other, but this top button here is closer to the second button than the rest of the buttons are to one another. That obnoxifies me. It doesn't make my heart sing. It makes my heart harumph. It's a grump. It's a grumpy heart when it looks at these. So my first thought is I should fix that. I should fix the distance of the button bands. And again, this is kind of my fault because I'm pretty sure I added length because the Felix is meant to be a bit cropped. So I added length and yeah, so it was just, it is all wrong with the button placement. Of course, with some critical thinking at the time, I could have solved this head on, but you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And I didn't know that I was making something that I would be obnoxified at in the end result. So anyway, all this to say, I could redo the button bands and then make sure that the buttons are all evenly spaced. However, if I were to undo the button band, that means I would need to undo the collar because the way that this pattern is constructed, you knit the body and then you pick up and knit the button bands and you stop here. This is your cast on edge. So you do both button bands and then you do the collar. So you can see the collar is stacked onto these button bands. So I can't undo the button bands without undoing the collar. You see my issue here? So therefore that means I can't cinch up the neckline until I decide what I want to do about the button bands. Because if I'm going to take out the button bands, I don't want to continue to modify the collar because that means I'll have to take out my modification before I take out the collar in order to take out the button bands. Everything's connected, much like life. Now, another thing I was thinking, perhaps I shouldn't have added length. Perhaps I want to make it more cropped. I haven't decided yet, not sure. Again, I need to look at myself in the mirror and not just this tiny viewfinder to decide how I feel ultimately about the fit and how I will style this. But if I'm going to take length out, I need to take the button bands off because the button bands are added after the body is completed. Okay, so after all of this, you may be thinking, okay, Rachel, so what are you going to do? Well, I thought about this and I thought maybe this button issue will not be so egregious if I had lower contrast buttons. I do have some purple buttons from Ireland that I got at Cushendale Woolen Mills. These are ceramic buttons by a ceramicist, I believe, based out of Portugal. But I got these. I got a set of green ones and a set of these purple ones. But I just do believe that this is not exactly the right purple. It's a little bit too pink, whereas this garment, there are pink undertones, but it's also like kind of a blue leaning purple, sort of, I think. Anyway, I don't think these buttons are what I want to do. So I have ordered some buttons off of Etsy. And when they arrive, I will take these. These are like faux mother of pearl buttons. I assume they're faux mother of pearl. I got them at an estate sale, so I have a lot of these buttons, which is why I was happy to be using them on this sweater, but I just don't think they're the right fit. So I got some buttons. I have them coming from Etsy. I'll take these buttons off when those new buttons arrive. I'll sew the new buttons on. I'll probably just sew the top two just to see if having a lower contrast eliminates the frustration of the distance between these two buttons. Also, I know that the top 2 buttons on garments often are spaced like this, and it's not unheard of, but it just, for whatever reason, it makes my brain jog. I look at it and I feel discombobulated. So we'll try it with lower contrast. If that is amenable to my heart, then I will not have to take out the collar, take out the button bands, etc. And then I can move forward with the collar modification, either going at it with my crochet hook or sewing in elastic. And then this will be officially done. I mean, I'm considering it done. It's a finished object as far as my Ravelry project page is concerned. But there are those additional items to consider. Now, would I make this pattern again? Yes, I would. I love how this fabric feels, as I told you, and I think that it's just like the perfect addition to your wardrobe. So if you have some DK weight yarn and lace weight yarn that would pair well together, consider the Felix, because it does work up quite quickly. I cast this on December 31st, and I cast it off on, I think, the 15th of January. Somewhere around there, 14th, 15th, 16th. All the information is on my Ravelry project page. Yes, and of course, as always, I plan to do an FO diary video on this. There are some issues with this pattern, but they are minimal. In my opinion, they are copy editing issues. Like, for instance, there's 2 different measurements for the collar. There's not a schematic, there's just finished measurements listed for the garment. And there are 2 differing measurements for the collar. It's just like stuff like that, like just some copy editing issues, which I'll go over. But overall, I really, really like this pattern. I like how it turned out. However, I do need to do some, after the fact modifications. And then I think it will just be chef's kiss perfect. It's a perfect color. I think it's gorgeous. And like I said, where did I put it? I'll talk more about this analog DK base, but just every chance I get, I want to reiterate it to you. If you ever try Clockwork Fiber Co., you have got to try the analog bases. She has analog fingering, analog DK, analog worsted. This Shanico wool is so amazing. It's so soft, it's grippy, it's substantial. It feels like, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it other than I love working with it. I love having this on my needle. It's a true joy. Okay, so that's it for the Felix. I'm just going to go ahead and keep this on at this point because you can only change your clothes so many times in a day before you get a little tired and you lose motivation to do your tasks. That's just the law. So I'll stay here. Now, okay. Second project to update you on. I don't want to tell you about this. I really don't. But I'm going to anyway, and maybe against my better judgment. And the reason I don't want to tell you about this is because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of a lot of things. I'm afraid that it won't pan out. I'm afraid that I'll be bad at it. I'm afraid that it will be a failure. I'm afraid that I'll get distracted and my motivation will go elsewhere, and then you'll always wonder why I didn't follow up on this thing I told you about. So, with fear in my heart, I will proceed. Here's the second project to update you on. I'm swatching for a sweater design. That is true. That is correct. Here's the story. This is actually the first swatch. I have the second swatch down here on the ground drying. But here's the story. I visited my sister and my family. Basically, we all converged at my sister's house to enjoy some time together before the new year really revved up. So I spent some time at my sister's house and enjoyed family time. And one morning we were playing Yahtzee and I looked across the table and my sister was wearing the most beautiful sweater ever. And I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, I want a sweater like that. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I could design that. I could make that. So I'm gonna try. I am gonna try. But here's the swatch. it's a bit see-through. So again, this is my first swatch. I swatched on smaller needles to see if I like that fabric more. But it's just a simple knit purl pattern. I know there's a word for this. I can't remember if it's, I know it's not seed stitch. It might be moss stitch. I will learn this for sure before, you know, the pattern gets going if that happens. But I'm swatching to design a sweater pattern because I saw it, I liked it, I wanted it for myself. Didn't see any like it on Ravelry, so keep your eyes peeled about that. Of course, as always, I reserve the right to change my mind. Maybe I will become too afraid and this will never see the light of day. But I'm telling you, because being a monogamous knitter makes me feel like I need to tell you more projects that I'm working on. So I did make 2 swatches for this sweater design this week. And that's kind of exciting. So stay tuned. The third project that I have to update you on is more proselytizing about analog DK. It's just an incredible base. Incredible. Sam is not the only dyer who carries Shanico. Cesium Yarn carries Shanico. And Sam, Clockwork Fiber Co. and Cesium Yarn both carry Shanico fiber, like spinning fiber as well. It's just a joy no matter what. So if you find a dyer, if you come across Shanico, whether it's from Clockwork Fiber Co., Cesium Yarn, someone else, try it. It's so good. So anyway, the third project to swatch for, which is actually going to lead me into my next section of the podcast, which is cast on plans. But I'm swatching on, what is this called? Elusive Mermaid. This colorway is Elusive Mermaid from Sam of Clockwork Fiber Co. It's such a teensy, weensy swatch that it's hard to show you. But after making the swatches for that potential sweater design, I just really wanted a treat. So I decided to finally swatch up my Elusive Mermaid on Analog DK. This is a sweater quantity that Sam gifted to me last year. And I talked about this sweater quantity on Save My Stash, which is a monthly Instagram live that Leslie of Knit California and I do. And basically we show each other yarn from our stash and the other one scours Ravelry to try and find the perfect pattern. So this sweater quantity was one that I showed on one installment of Save My Stash. And the sweater pattern that Leslie recommended and that ultimately won out over the other suggestions was the, not the deep winter coat, the Winter's Beach cardigan by Andrea Mallory of Drea Renee Knits. And so I've been waiting to cast this on, but something just didn't feel right, like this yarn paired with that pattern. So I was looking at my Ravelry library, and the Ginny by Andrea Mallory kind of jumped out at me and spoke to me. I think that this would look really, really pretty as the Ginny. But then also, is it the Granny cardigan or the Grandpa cardigan? I think it's the Grandpa cardigan by Joji Locatelli. Also stuck out to me. So I'm swatching for either or, the Ginny or the Grandpa. I haven't decided yet. And it's fine in my mind because the gauge for the Ginny is 19 3/4 stitches over 4 inches on US size 6. And the gauge for the Grandpa cardigan is 19.5 stitches over 4 inches on US size 6. So I'm just swatching away and either one will work. Of course, I don't know if either of those will actually be what I cast on, but I'm just loving knitting up this yarn. And as soon as I got this Shanico back on my needles, I felt like, this is the life. This is the good stuff. So I'm just having a great time with this little itty bitty swatch just because the yarn is so enjoyable to work with. And the reason I'll say that the Grandpa cardigan from Joji Locatelli like got in the running, I'm about to sneeze, excuse me. Yeah, so once I cast on the swatch, I was just falling in love with this yarn again, with this base, and I thought, this is really fun to knit stockinette, but it'd be even more fun to knit cables. So then I went back to thinking about cables. I think the reason the Winter's Beach Cardi, like, to me, I think I want more of like a classic neutral, and I have kind of like a gray in my stash that would work for that. So for this, I was thinking something, I don't know, something a little different. So we'll just see. We'll see where the swatch takes me. But that leads me into the next section of my podcast, which is cast-on plans. So I kind of had one foot in the door already. So the next thing that I'm really itching to make is from this Fair Isle knitting book that I checked out at my library. And I was looking at this in the library, and I was gonna put it back on the shelf. But then I flipped to this page. Look at these Fair Isle stranded colorwork project bags. Are not these the cutest? So there's 3 different iterations that you can choose from, and they're different sizes. I just think they're so cute. So I'm thinking I will make either this one, which is the smallest one, or this one, which I think is the medium-sized one. I think, because I love how these patterns look, whereas this bag in the back is kind of all the same motif. These two incorporate different patterns to make the grand pattern, which I really like. So I thought that would be fun. I want to cast those on. I want to use my Shetland knitting belt and my long double pointed needles, which I keep in a bouquet in my Nicholas Moss fuchsia vase back here. Just the perfect pairing, because my long double pointed needles are souvenirs from my Scotland knitting tour, and then the Nicholas Moss fuchsia vase is a souvenir from my Irish knitting tour. So the two come together to just be so pretty, and they make me so happy. So those are my cast on plans. Some sort of sweater design, and a Fair Isle project bag. I don't know if I'll do if I'll start all of those this week, because again, I've really been enjoying the monogamous-ish, slow-going process of knitting lately. I don't know what will happen. I don't know. I just don't know. But that's it for cast-on plans and project diaries. So let's talk next about spin diary. Da-da-da-da! I have finished my braid, now skein, of Glimmer and Glisten Rambouillet fiber from Long Dog Yarn. Brandy gifted this to me last year, and I had some issues with this at first. The Rambouillet was different than any fiber that I've worked with before. I think it was a combination of Rambouillet was its own thing, and I hadn't really been spinning regularly for a minute, so I had to get back in the saddle. And this skein is actually so interesting because there are definitely spots that are inconsistent, as you can clearly see, but I think this is my finest spin yet overall, which is really nice to see. Really nice to see. Like, let me grab it. Here's my skein of Shanico that I spun. This was from Cesium Yarn. And I remember at the time, I thought I was basically spinning a fingering weight. I thought I was doing so well. But of course, in skein form, it's much more bulky than a fingering weight. But if I look at the comparison of these two skeins, there are definitely portions on both that are bulkier than the majority of the skein, and then of course portions that are thinner. But I think on the whole, this is a thinner spin than this. So it's just nice. It's just nice to see my progress, because I think definitely a thinner spin is what I want to gain proficiency in. So there you go. Really happy with this cute little skein. This is a 2-ply. I didn't measure the yardage or the weight because I just didn't feel like it, and I don't really care right now. So, you know, the yardage and the weight isn't going anywhere, so there's no need to do it now if I don't feel like it. So I'm very happy with this, and I'm itching to get more fiber on the wheel. In fact, I have some fiber. I can't remember if I showed you. 2 braids of this at Hook and Needle. I think I did show you. Did I show you? I don't remember. But anyway, I have this fiber. It's merino fiber. I know merino is hard to spin or more difficult to spin because it's slippery and has a short staple length, but I love the color of this braid, so I got 2 of them, and I thought it would make such a cute, beautiful, amazing, wonderful skein. So, like for color work in a purple sweater. You see the vision here? So, anyway, all that to say, I don't know what I'll spin next, but I do know I like spinning, because here's the thing. I have found that even in a world where I am monogamously knitting, or, you know, somewhere close to that delineator. Is that the right word? I don't care. Even when I'm living like that, I hit roadblocks with a project, or I get frustrated with a project. And in the past, I would just pick up a different project on my needles and make some progress on that. But what I've been doing recently is I have sat down at my spinning wheel and worked on spinning my yarn, which has been really, really nice, a really nice practice to separate myself from the frustration of one craft and lean into the beauty and the joy of another. Yeah, so anyway, to sum up, I'm excited to keep spinning, but I don't know what that will be yet. So that's it for Spin Diary. Next section would be acquisitions, big fat nothing. So that leaves us with the final section of the podcast, which is announcements. I've got the same announcement that I've had and will continue to have until the trip fills up, which is the 2025 Irish Knitting Tour is open for signups. The tour takes place from October 5th to October 14th. If you are in the US like I am, just imagine how badly the version of you who exists in October will be weary and want to have a vacation abroad. So do yourself a favor and sign up today. It will be a trip of a lifetime. We're going to Irish woolen mills. We have workshops led by knitting and adjacent experts. For instance, we have a needle felting workshop. We have a Tunisian crochet workshop. It's going to be fabulous. We have a private shopping experience at This Is Knit, which is Dublin's premier local yarn store. Basically, it's chock full of good stuff, this knitting tour. You get to be enjoying your knitting, enjoying the Irish countryside, learning about history, the local what to do's, what to knows, all these things, making new friends, and I can't wait. So if you want to come, please sign up. We have, what did I think? What did I say last time? I can't remember what it was last week, but now we have 19 people signed up, which means we have up to space for up to 10 more people, but only 6 of those people can be knitters. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we can have 25 knitters, but 29 people total. So if you like to come and bring your non-knitting companion, whether that is your significant other, your family member, your friend, or bring your friend who knits, call them up, say, hey, we're going to Ireland. They'll say, great, I was waiting for you to say so. You'll both sign up. It'll be great, and I'll see you in October. Yeah, so anyway, I'm here to answer your questions if you have them about the tour. Also, I have vlogs. There's a few installments that haven't gone up yet from the most recent knitting tour because life comes at you fast, and I've just been chasing deadline after deadline. But all this to say, you can watch recaps of previous tours if you want to get an idea of what you can expect to enjoy while you're on the knitting tour with me. So that's all I have for this video. That's all I have for announcements. Am I forgetting anything? No, I don't think so. And if I am, it will just haunt me for a few days before next week's podcast. And I'll just have to live with that. So, hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you don't already, and hit that notification bell to be notified of my next upload. Last but not least, head over to Rachel is Knitting and follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want, TikTok. What a wild roller coaster that is. But keep in touch and hope you're doing well. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.